Do you really think anyone would want to marry a desperate woman like you unless it's for money? Bentley Ashford III's words echoed through the dining room like a slap in the face. I felt my stomach turn, not because of the cruelty itself. I already expected that from him. But because of my own father's complicit laughter. That laugh that said he agreed. That I was exactly that. A commodity with an expiring expiration date. That needed to be traded before it lost all value. At 28 years old, I, Scarlett Montgomery, heiress to Montgomery & Co., was being auctioned off like cattle. And the worst part? A piece of me was starting to believe them. 3 days later, I was sitting in an unpretentious cafe in Brooklyn, completely out of my element. My Chanel tweed was attracting suspicious looks, and I wondered, for the 1000th time, if I had gone completely insane. "Are you Scarlett?" A deep voice pulled me from my thoughts. I looked up and almost choked on my macchiato. The man before me was unexpected. Tall, broad shoulders under a worn leather jacket, dark brown hair slightly messy, and green eyes that seemed to read every one of my secrets. He had stubble that should have looked sloppy, but on him it seemed intentional. Definitely not the type of man who frequented the same circles as me. "You must be Knox?" I swallowed hard, checking the ridiculous name my assistant had written down from the blind dating app. Knox Holloway. It sounded like an action movie character's name. In the flesh. He sat down without ceremony, and I noticed his hands, large, with some scratches, hands that worked with them. "So, your friend said you have an interesting business proposal for me." Usually when someone says that on a dating app, it's code for something very different. I felt my face heat up. "It's nothing. Sexual." What a disappointment. He smiled crookedly, and I couldn't tell if he was joking or not. "I'm listening." I took a deep breath. It was now or never. "I need you to pretend to be my fiancé." Knox blinked, once, twice, then let out a short, incredulous laugh. "You're kidding. $50,000. The laughter died. "Say that again." $50,000 for 3 months of work, maybe 4, depending on how long it takes my father to sign the company papers. I opened my purse and took out an envelope. "Here's a preliminary contract. Basically, you show up to some dinners, family events, pretend you're madly in love with me, and when it's all over, we break up amicably and you keep the money." Knox took the envelope as if it might explode. His eyes scanned the pages and I watched every micro-expression on his face. Confusion, disbelief, and then something that looked like calculation. "Why me?" "Because you don't know me. Because you're clearly not part of my world." I made a vague gesture toward his clothes. "And because, honestly, you're the first person I've met on this damn app who didn't immediately recognize me." "And why do you need a fake fiancé?" "Trouble with the rich, boring boyfriend." "Rich, insufferable fiancé, actually." I twisted my mouth. "Bentley Ashford III. Our parents arranged a business deal disguised as a marriage. If I marry him, he invests in my family's company that's on the verge of bankruptcy. If I don't marry him," I swallowed hard, "we lose everything. The company my grandfather built, the jobs of 200 people, the Montgomery family legacy." "So you're hiring me to save your company?" "I'm hiring you to save me from a miserable marriage." I looked directly into his eyes. My father gave me an ultimatum. Either I marry Bentley, or I present someone worthy by the Christmas charity ball. The problem is, in my family's vocabulary, worthy means rich. And I'm clearly not rich. Exactly. That's where the fun part comes in. I smiled for the first time. "We're going to make my family beg me to go back to Bentley. When they realize how unsuitable you are, they'll give up on the ultimatum. Bentley will be so offended that someone like me preferred a—" I stopped, searching for the right words. "A nobody?" Knox suggested, emotionless. I grimaced. I was going to say normal person, but anyway. Bentley will cancel the engagement. My father will realize he can't force me into anything. and I buy time to find another solution to save the company. Everyone wins. Except me, who's going to have to put up with your family treating me like trash for 3 months. For $50,000. I leaned forward. Look, I know it sounds crazy. It sounds crazy even to me. But I'm desperate. My wedding is scheduled for 4 months from now, and I'd rather run away to Mexico than spend the rest of my life listening to Bentley talk about his golf handicap and his stock portfolio. Knox was silent for a long moment, drumming his fingers on the table. I could almost hear his thoughts. "There's something you're not telling me," he finally said. My heart raced. "What do you mean?" "Nobody offers $50,000 to a stranger without having a very, very good reason. Either you're being blackmailed, or you're running from something much worse than an arranged marriage." He leaned forward, and for the first time, I saw something sharp in his eyes. Intelligence. "So, Scarlett Montgomery, what's your real secret?" I should have been suspicious then. Should have noticed that Knox Holloway knew how to ask questions that were too smart for just some regular guy from Brooklyn looking for a date on an app. But I was desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. "Do we have a deal or not?" I extended my hand. Knox looked at my hand, then at me, and then, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, he shook it. "We have a deal, fiancé." In that moment, sitting in that cheap Brooklyn cafe, with a stranger's hand in mine, I had no idea that I had just made the biggest mistake, or the best decision, of my life. The thing about hiring a fake fiancé is that you don't really think about the logistics until you're standing in front of him, realizing he needs to look like he belongs in your world. Knox showed up at my penthouse apartment exactly on time, which should have been my second clue that something was off about him. In my experience, guys who lived paycheck to paycheck weren't usually punctual. "Nice place," he said, stepping into my marble foyer like he owned it. "How many bathrooms?" 4. "Why?" "Just wondering how the other half lives." He walked straight to my floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, hands in his pockets. "Must be nice, waking up to this view every morning." There was something in his tone I couldn't quite place. Not quite resentment, but not quite admiration either. It was familiar, like he'd seen views like this before. "We need to talk about ground rules," I said, pulling out a folder I'd prepared. Yes, I'd made a folder. Don't judge me. "First, we need to get our story straight. How did we meet?" "Dating app. You already said that." "I said that to you, but my family can't know I was on a dating app. That's..." I searched for the word. "Desperate?" Knox supplied, turning to face me with that infuriating half-smile. "Common," I corrected, feeling my cheeks heat. "We need something more. Romantic. Believable. Coffee shop. I spilled my latte on you. Classic meet cute." I blinked. "You know what a meet cute is?" "I watch movies, Scarlett. I'm not a caveman." He moved closer, and I caught a whiff of his cologne. Something woodsy and expensive. Too expensive for someone who supposedly needed $50,000. Although, if we're going for believable, maybe we should practice. Practice what? This. Before I could process what was happening, Knox reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered just a moment too long on my cheek, and I felt an unexpected jolt of electricity. I stepped back. "What are you doing?" "Practicing. Your family is going to be watching us like hawks, right? Looking for any sign that this isn't real. We need to be comfortable with each other. Touching. Casual intimacy." His voice was matter-of-fact, but his eyes were studying my reaction carefully. He wasn't wrong. I hated that he wasn't wrong. Fine. But there are boundaries. No kissing unless absolutely necessary. Define necessary. If someone literally says, "Kiss her, or we won't believe you." Knox laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his entire face. "Has anyone ever told you that you're incredibly uptight?" "Multiple times, usually right before they ask me to marry them for my money." The humor drained from his expression. Is that what happened with Bentley? I moved to my bar cart and poured myself a bourbon. It was barely noon, but this conversation required alcohol. Bentley and I have known each other since we were children. Our families run in the same circles. When my father's company started failing, the Ashfords saw an opportunity. A merger disguised as a marriage. Bentley gets access to Montgomery legacy and connections. My father gets the Ashford money to save the company. And what do you get? A life of quiet desperation and fundraiser galas. I took a long sip. Bentley isn't a bad person. He's just empty, like a designer suit with nothing inside. He collects things: art, cars, companies, wives. Wives? Plural? He's been engaged twice before. Both times the women broke it off. Smart girls. I set down my glass. I would be his third attempt. He's determined to make this one stick. Knox was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was softer. Why don't you just say no? Because my father will disown me. Because 200 people will lose their jobs. Because the company my grandfather built will be sold to vultures who'll strip it for parts. I laughed bitterly. Take your pick. There has to be another way. If there was, don't you think I would have found it? I turned to face him fully. I've spent 6 months exploring every option. Banks won't loan us money. Investors want too much control. The only person willing to help is Bentley, and his price is me. So you hired me to be the lesser evil. I hired you to buy me time. I grabbed the folder again, needing to change the subject. Now let's talk about tomorrow night. My mother is hosting a dinner party. Small, intimate. Just 30 of her closest friends. Knox's eyebrows shot up. 30 people is small and intimate? In my mother's world, yes. You'll need to wear a suit. I have a suit. A good suit. Tailored. Do you have one? The pause before his answer was just a fraction too long. I can get one. I'll send you to my tailor. He can rush it. I made a note in my phone. What's your size? 42 regular, 32 waist. But Scarlett, shoes? 11. But seriously, you don't need to. I absolutely do need to. My mother will notice everything. Your shoes, your watch, how you hold your fork, whether you know which wine glass is yours. I looked up at him. This isn't going to be easy, Knox. My family is going to judge you on every little thing. They're going to look for reasons you're not good enough. Because I'm poor. Because you're not from their world. I softened my tone. I know it's not fair. But that's the reality of what you signed up for. Knox crossed his arms, and for the first time I saw something like anger flash in his eyes. You know what's funny? You're assuming I don't know how to act in high society, that I've never been to a fancy dinner party, that I don't know which fork to use. Have you? That's not the point. The point is, you're making assumptions about me based on… what? My clothes? Where I live? The fact that I need money? He was right, and I felt shame creep up my neck. I'm sorry. You're right. That was presumptuous of me. Yeah, it was. He moved toward the door. Send me the details for tomorrow night. I'll be there. Properly dressed. Properly behaved. And I'll make your family believe that you're madly in love with a man so beneath you that they'll beg you to marry Bentley instead. Knox, wait. But he was already gone, the door closing behind him with a decisive click. I stood there in my expensive apartment with my expensive bourbon, feeling like the worst kind of snob. Which, to be fair, I probably was. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. By the way, I already know which fork to use. See you tomorrow, fiancé. Despite everything, I smiled. This was either going to be a disaster or the most interesting 3 months of my life. Probably both. I spent the entire day of my mother's dinner party convinced that Knox wouldn't show up. He'd show up in jeans just to spite me. Or he'd show up drunk. Or he wouldn't show up at all. And I'd have to explain to 30 of Manhattan's elite that my fiancé had stood me up. So when my doorbell rang at exactly 6:30, 30 minutes before we needed to leave, I was already preparing my speech about food poisoning. I opened the door and forgot how to breathe. Knox stood there in a midnight blue Tom Ford suit that fit him like it had been painted on. His hair was styled back, the stubble neatly trimmed, and he was wearing a watch that I recognized as a Patek Philippe. A real one. The kind that cost more than most people's cars. Close your mouth, Scarlett. You're going to catch flies. I snapped my jaw shut. Where did you get the suit? I told you I'd handle it. He stepped inside, and I caught that expensive cologne again. You look beautiful, by the way. I'd chosen a simple emerald dress, nothing too flashy. But the way Knox was looking at me made me feel like I was wearing diamonds. We need to talk about that watch, I said, finding my voice. What about it? That's a $100,000 watch, Knox. Where did you get it? He glanced at his wrist like he'd forgotten he was wearing it. It was my grandfather's. Why? Your grandfather owned a Patek Philippe? Is that a problem? His tone was challenging, almost daring me to push further. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But we were already running late, and I needed to focus on surviving the night. We'll talk about this later, I said, grabbing my clutch. Right now, I need to brief you on my family. In the car ride to my mother's estate in the Hamptons, I gave Knox the rundown. My mother, Victoria Montgomery, was a former debutante who'd married into old money and never let anyone forget it. My father, Richard Montgomery, was a businessman who'd inherited his father's company and was slowly running it into the ground through poor decisions and pride. My younger sister, Pepper, was a wild card who'd probably either love Knox or hate him on principle. And Bentley will be there, I finished. Because of course he will. My mother still thinks we're getting married. Does she know about me? She knows I'm bringing a date. She doesn't know you're my fiancé yet. I'm going to announce it tonight. Knox let out a low whistle. You really know how to make an entrance. Go big or go home, right? More like go big and get disowned. He wasn't wrong. My mother's cottage in the Hamptons was a 12-bedroom estate overlooking the ocean. The driveway was already packed with luxury cars, and I could hear the sound of string quartet music floating through the evening air. Knox helped me out of the car, his hand warm and steady on my elbow. Ready? He murmured. No. But let's do this anyway. The moment we walked through the door, conversations stopped. I felt 30 pairs of eyes turn to assess the man on my arm, and I squeezed Knox's hand tighter. Darling. My mother glided toward us in a cloud of Chanel No. 5 and judgment. You're late. And who is this? Mother, this is Knox Holloway. Knox, this is my mother, Victoria Montgomery. Knox extended his hand with perfect confidence. Mrs. Montgomery, it's a pleasure. Thank you for including me this evening. Your home is stunning. My mother's eyes narrowed as she shook his hand, clearly trying to place him. Holloway. I don't believe I know any Holloways. No, ma'am. I don't imagine you do. And what is it that you do, Mr. Holloway? Here it was. The moment of truth. I'm in construction, Knox said smoothly. I waited for the disdain, the dismissive look, but my mother just smiled tightly. How industrious. Scarlett, dear, Bentley is looking for you. He's on the terrace. Of course he was. I felt Knox stiffen beside me. I'd love to meet him, he said, his voice pleasant but his eyes sharp. We found Bentley exactly where my mother said, holding court with a group of hedge fund managers. He was wearing his usual uniform, navy blazer, crisp white shirt, and an expression of supreme boredom. Scarlett, he said when he saw me, his eyes sliding to Knox with obvious disdain. I see you brought a friend. Bentley, this is Knox, my fiancé. The terrace went silent. Even the ocean seemed to stop. Bentley's face went through several emotions in rapid succession. Confusion, disbelief, and finally rage carefully masked by a condescending smile. Your fiancé, he repeated slowly. How unexpected. When did this happen? Recently, I said, leaning into Knox's side. He wrapped his arm around my waist naturally, like we'd done this 1,000 times. We met a few months ago and just clicked. Months ago? Bentley's voice was ice. You were engaged to me months ago, Scarlett. Was I? I don't recall you ever actually asking me. Our fathers made a business arrangement. That's not an engagement, Bentley. That's a transaction. Someone gasped. I think it might have been my mother. Knox's hand tightened on my waist, supportive, grounding. I understand this is awkward, he said to Bentley. But Scarlett and I are in love. I hope you can respect that. Bentley laughed, a harsh sound. Love. Right. And what exactly do you do, Knox? What's your net worth? Your family connections? Bentley, I warned. No, it's okay, Knox said, his voice calm. I work with my hands. I build things. My net worth is probably a fraction of yours. And my family connections? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Well, I suppose they're not the kind that matter to people like you. People like me, Bentley repeated. You mean successful people? People who can actually provide for their wives? I mean people who measure a person's worth by their bank account. Knox turned to me, his eyes soft. Scarlett doesn't need someone to provide for her. She needs someone who sees her as more than a trophy or a business deal. I stared at him, my heart doing something complicated in my chest. It was an act. I knew it was an act. But God, it felt real. This is ridiculous, Bentley spat. Richard, are you going to allow this? My father had appeared on the terrace, his face red with either anger or too much scotch. Scarlett, we need to talk, now. No, we don't. I stood straighter. I'm not marrying Bentley, I'm marrying Knox. And if you can't accept that, then I guess we have nothing to talk about. I grabbed Knox's hand and pulled him back through the house, past the shocked guests, past my mother's horrified expression, and out to the car. My hands were shaking as I fumbled with the door handle. Hey, Knox said softly, covering my hands with his. You okay? I just blew up my entire life. Yeah, you did. He smiled. It was pretty spectacular. Despite everything, I laughed. My father is going to kill me. Probably. But at least you went down swinging. He opened my door. Come on. Let's get out of here. As we drove away from my mother's estate, my phone started buzzing with angry calls and texts. I turned it off. That went well, Knox said dryly. That was a disaster. That was you being brave. He glanced at me. For what it's worth, I meant what I said back there. You deserve better than Bentley. You don't even know me. I'm beginning to. His voice was quiet. And what I'm seeing, you're stronger than you think, Scarlett Montgomery. I looked out the window, blinking back unexpected tears. This was supposed to be simple, a business transaction. But somewhere between the coffee shop and tonight, something had shifted. And I wasn't sure if that was good or very, very dangerous. I woke up the next morning to 47 missed calls, 89 text messages, and a headache that felt like my brain was trying to escape through my skull. The first call was from my father. The voicemail was 3 minutes of him alternating between fury and disappointment. You've embarrassed this family, Scarlett. That man is completely unsuitable. Call me immediately. The second was from Bentley. You're making a mistake. He's using you. I'll give you 1 week to come to your senses. The third was from my sister, Pepper. OMG, who is he and where can I get one? Call me. I deleted the first two and called Pepper. Tell me everything, she demanded before I could even say hello. And I mean everything. He's gorgeous, by the way. Mother is having a stroke. It's amazing. Pepper, is he really in construction? Because those hands look like they could build more than houses, if you know what I mean. I know exactly what you mean, and can you not? She laughed. So how did you really meet him? Because the coffee shop story is cute, but you hate coffee shops. Too many germs. I'd forgotten how perceptive my little sister was. It's complicated. Complicated like we met on a dating app. Complicated. Or complicated like I hired him to pretend to be my fiancé. Complicated. My silence said everything. Oh my God, Scarlett, you didn't. I'm going to hang up now. Don't you dare. Does he know you're loaded? Of course he knows. That's the whole point. He's supposed to be so unsuitable that father backs off about Bentley. And is he? Unsuitable, I mean? I thought about Knox in that Tom Ford suit, the way he'd handled Bentley with perfect composure, the Patek Philippe on his wrist. I'm not sure anymore. Interesting. I could hear the smile in Pepper's voice. You like him. It's a business arrangement that you're starting to have feelings about. Goodbye, Pepper. Use protection, she called out before I hung up. I stared at my phone, my sister's words echoing in my head. I didn't have feelings for Knox. I couldn't. This was temporary, transactional. In 3 months, maybe 4, he'd take his money and disappear back to whatever life he came from, and I'd... What? Marry someone else my father chose? Spend the rest of my life wondering what it would have been like if Knox had been real. I shook my head. I was being ridiculous. My phone buzzed with a text from the man himself. How many death threats did you get this morning? Me. Just 3. You? Knox. Your mother found my number somehow. Very creative vocabulary for a society lady. Despite everything, I laughed. Knox. Dinner tonight? We should probably discuss strategy. And you can explain why you're surprised I own nice things. He had a point. We needed to talk. Me. My place, 7 p.m. I'll cook. Knox. You cook? Me. Don't sound so surprised. I'm full of hidden talents. Knox. Can't wait to discover them. I stared at that text for way too long, my stomach doing something inappropriate. Knox arrived at 7 sharp, this time in jeans and a simple black Henley that somehow looked better than the Tom Ford suit. He carried a bottle of wine that I recognized as a vintage Burgundy that cost at least $500. Where do you keep getting this stuff? I asked, taking the bottle. I have good taste? He followed me into the kitchen. What are we making? Pasta carbonara, simple but impressive. My favorite. He rolled up his sleeves and washed his hands without being asked. Put me to work. We fell into an easy rhythm, Knox chopping bacon while I prepared the pasta. It felt domestic in a way that made my chest tight. This wasn't supposed to feel comfortable. He wasn't supposed to fit into my life like a puzzle piece I didn't know was missing. So, I said, breaking the silence, that watch, the suit, the wine. Want to explain? Knox was quiet for a moment, focused on the cutting board. What do you want me to say, Scarlett? The truth would be nice. He set down the knife and turned to face me. The truth is complicated. Try me. What if I told you that I'm not exactly who you think I am? My heart started racing. What does that mean? It means... He stopped, seeming to struggle with something. It means that maybe we both had reasons for answering that dating app ad. Maybe we're both running from something. Knox, you're scaring me. Who are you, really? Before he could answer, my apartment buzzer rang. Aggressive, insistent. I checked the camera, and my blood went cold. It's my father. Do you want me to leave? No. I grabbed his hand. No. I want you to stay, please. Something shifted in his expression. Okay, then let's do this together. I buzzed my father up, and within seconds, he was pounding on my door. Richard Montgomery stormed in like a hurricane, his face purple with rage. What the hell do you think you're doing, Scarlett? Having dinner with my fiancé. Would you like to join us? Don't be smart with me. He pointed at Knox. You, out, now. I'm not going anywhere, Knox said calmly, stepping beside me. Not unless Scarlett asks me to leave. You have no idea who you're dealing with, boy. Actually, sir, I think I have a pretty good idea. You're a man who's about to lose his company because you made bad investments and worse decisions, and now you're trying to sell your daughter to fix your mistakes. I gasped. So did my father. How dare you? How dare I tell the truth? Scarlett deserves better than being used as a bargaining chip. She deserves someone who values her for more than her last name and her connections. And you're that someone? A construction worker with nothing to offer? Knox smiled, but it was sharp, dangerous. I never said I was a construction worker, Mr. Montgomery. I said I work in construction. There's a difference. What difference? The difference between the man swinging the hammer and the man who owns the company that makes them. Knox's voice was steel. But you never asked, did you? You saw what you wanted to see. Someone beneath your daughter. Someone you could dismiss. The room went silent. My father stared at Knox with new eyes, and I saw the moment recognition dawned. Holloway, Knox Holloway, you're… Yes. Knox's jaw tightened. I am. Someone want to fill me in? I looked between them. My father's face had gone from purple to white. He's Harrison Holloway's grandson, Holloway Industries. They own half the construction contracts in the tri-state area. Their net worth is substantially more than yours, Knox finished. Which is why when Scarlett offered me money to pretend to be her fiancé, I found it amusing enough to say yes. The air left my lungs. You knew. This whole time, you knew who I was. Yes. And you lied to me. You lied first, he said quietly. You assumed I was poor and desperate. I let you assume. We both came into this dishonestly, Scarlett. My father looked between us, his expression calculating now. You're Harrison's grandson. This changes everything. Does it? Knox's eyes never left mine. Because from where I'm standing, nothing has changed. Scarlett still doesn't want to marry Bentley. I still agreed to help her. The only difference is now you know I'm suitable. He practically spat the word. This is perfect, my father said, his mood shifting instantly. A merger between Montgomery and Holloway. No. Knox's voice cut through. I'm not Bentley. I'm not here to save your company or your pride. I'm here because your daughter asked me to help her escape a marriage she didn't want. He turned to me, his green eyes intense. But I think we need to talk. Alone. My father sputtered protests, but Knox simply took my hand and led me to my bedroom, closing the door on my father's outrage. You lied to me, I said again, because it was all I could think. Yes. He stepped closer. And I'm sorry. But Scarlett, if I'd told you who I was that first day, would you have hired me? Or would you have assumed I had ulterior motives? He was right. I would have run. Why did you say yes? I whispered. If you're rich, why did you agree to this? Knox cupped my face gently, his thumbs brushing my cheeks. Because when you walked into that coffee shop, you looked like someone drowning. And I've been there. I know what it's like to be trapped by family expectations and impossible choices. So this was pity. No, this was recognition. He leaned his forehead against mine, one trapped bird recognizing another. What now? I asked, barely breathing. Now we decide if this is still pretend or if somewhere along the way it became something real. And then Knox Holloway, billionaire in disguise, kissed me like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. And God help me, I kissed him back. Knox pulled back first, his eyes searching mine like he was trying to read a language he'd forgotten. That was… I started, but couldn't finish. A mistake? He offered, his voice rough. I was going to say unexpected, but also possibly a mistake. I stepped back, needing space to think. My lips still tingled from the kiss, and my father was probably destroying my living room in rage. Nothing about this moment made sense. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. From the beginning. Why play along with my assumption that you needed the money? Knox ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I was beginning to recognize as his tell when he was uncomfortable. Because for once in my life, Someone was looking at me without seeing dollar signs. Do you have any idea what that's like, Scarlett? To wonder if people like you for you or for what you can give them. Actually, yes, I do. That's literally my entire life. He smiled sadly. Right. I guess we have more in common than I thought. Your grandfather, Harrison Holloway, he's the one who built Holloway Industries from nothing, who's worth about $3.2 billion, who's been trying to marry me off to appropriate society girls since I turned 21. Knox leaned against my dresser. Sound familiar? Why didn't you just tell him no? I did, multiple times. But Harrison doesn't take no for an answer. So I've been avoiding him. Working on smaller projects under a different name, trying to figure out who I am when I'm not the Holloway heir. Knox isn't your real name? It's my middle name, Knox Alexander Holloway. But I've been going by just Knox, taking freelance construction consulting jobs, living in a modest apartment in Brooklyn. He laughed bitterly, playing at being normal. And when I offered you $50,000, I thought it was hilarious. This beautiful, desperate woman offering me pocket change to help her escape the exact situation I've been running from. He looked at me directly. And then I met you, really met you, and it stopped being funny. My heart was doing complicated gymnastics in my chest. When? When what? When did it stop being funny and start being something else? Knox was quiet for a long moment. The coffee shop. When you looked at me like I was your last chance at freedom, I saw myself in you, Scarlett. And I wanted to save you the way no one had saved me. That's not a good reason to kiss someone. No, it's not. He moved closer, slowly, giving me time to move away. I didn't. Want to know what is a good reason? What? Because I've thought about it every day since we met. Because you're brilliant and fierce and you don't take anyone's crap. Because when you laugh, you try to hide it like joy is something to be ashamed of. Because my bedroom door burst open and my father stood there, his expression triumphant. I've just gotten off the phone with Harrison Holloway, he announced. Your grandfather is thrilled about the engagement. He's been trying to reach you for weeks, apparently. Knox went rigid. You called my grandfather. Of course I did. This is a business matter now. Montgomery and Holloway joining forces. It's perfect. Better than the Ashford deal. We're not a business deal, I said, my voice shaking with anger. Everything is a business deal, sweetheart. You're just finally in one that makes sense. My father's smile was smug. Harrison wants to meet with both of you tomorrow. Lunch at his club, 1 o'clock. No. Knox's voice was flat. I'm sorry. I said no. Scarlett and I will decide when and how we deal with my family, not you. My father's expression darkened. Son, you don't understand how this works. I'm not your son. And I understand exactly how it works. You see an opportunity to save your failing company by attaching yourself to my family name. But here's the thing, Mr. Montgomery. I don't need you. I don't need your company, or your connections, or your approval. Knox took my hand. The only person in this room whose opinion matters to me is Scarlett's. I stared at our joined hands, my mind racing. Scarlett, be reasonable, my father said. This is everything we wanted. The company is saved. You get out of marrying Bentley, and you're marrying into one of the wealthiest families in America. But I'm still being sold, I whispered. Just to a different buyer. My father flinched. That's exactly what it is. I looked at Knox, really looked at him. You said you wanted to save me, but how is this different? Now, instead of my father making decisions, it's your grandfather. Instead of Bentley's expectations, it's your family's legacy. I'm still trapped. No, Knox said firmly. You're not, because this is your choice, Scarlett. We can call this off right now. I'll tell my grandfather I'm not interested. We'll find another way to save your company. There is no other way, my father interrupted. Without Holloway or Ashford money, Montgomery & Co. files for bankruptcy in 6 weeks. The number hit me like a punch. 6 weeks. I'd thought I had more time. I'll give you the money, Knox said immediately. What? My father and I spoke in unison. I'll invest in Montgomery & Co. No marriage required, no strings attached, just a straightforward business investment. Why would you do that? I asked, suspicion creeping in. Because you shouldn't have to marry someone to save your family. Not me, not Bentley, not anyone. His green eyes were intense. You deserve to choose your own life, Scarlett. And what about us? The words slipped out before I could stop them. What about us? That kiss. This, I gestured between us. Is it real? Or are we still playing pretend? Knox cupped my face, his touch gentle. I don't know how to separate the real from the pretend anymore. Do you? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Pepper's name flashed on the screen. Don't answer that, my father said. I answered it. Pepper, not a good time. Bentley knows, she interrupted, her voice panicked. He hired a private investigator. He knows Knox is Harrison Holloway's grandson. And Scarlett, he's coming over there, now. He's furious and drunk and saying things about how you played him. How long do I have? He left 15 minutes ago. Maybe 20 minutes? I hung up and looked at Knox. Bentley's on his way. He knows everything. Good, Knox said grimly. Let him come. I'm done hiding. Knox. No, I'm done, Scarlett. Done pretending to be poor. Done running from my grandfather. Done avoiding confrontation. He turned to my father. Call Harrison. Tell him we'll be at lunch tomorrow, but we'll be there on our terms, not his. My father nodded, for once speechless. Knox looked back at me. And as for what's real and what's pretend, I think we're about to find out, because when Bentley gets here, I'm going to tell him exactly what I think of men who treat women like property. And then, I'm going to kiss you again, in front of everyone, and dare anyone to tell me I don't have the right. That's a terrible plan, I said. You have a better one? I thought about it, about the kiss, about the way Knox had stood up to my father, about how he'd offered to save my company without asking for anything in return, about the fact that in 3 days, this man had turned my entire world upside down. No, I said finally, but if we're doing this, we're doing it together. No more secrets, no more pretending. No more pretending, Knox agreed. He kissed me again, softer this time. A promise instead of a question. And when the doorbell rang with Bentley's aggressive buzzing, neither of us pulled away. Let him see. Let them all see. I was done being sold. Done being controlled. Done being ashamed of what I wanted. And what I wanted, I was beginning to realize, was standing right in front of me. The question was, did Knox want me back? Or was he just another man trying to save me when what I really needed was to save myself? I guess we were about to find out. Bentley Ashford III didn't knock. He used the key my mother had given him months ago, when everyone still believed we'd be married by spring. He stumbled into my apartment, his tie loosened, his perfect hair disheveled, and his eyes wild with rage and alcohol. You, he slurred, pointing at Knox. You think you're so clever, playing poor, making a fool of me. I didn't make a fool of you, Bentley, Knox said calmly, positioning himself between Bentley and me. You did that all by yourself. Do you know who I am? A drunk man breaking into my fiancé's apartment. Should I call the police or security? Bentley's face turned purple. Your fiancé, that's rich. You really think the Holloways will accept her? You're Harrison Holloway's biggest disappointment. He's told everyone. The grandson who refuses to take his place, who works construction like a common laborer. At least I work, Knox shot back. What do you do, Bentley, besides spend your trust fund and collect wives like baseball cards? Knox, I warned, but I couldn't deny the satisfaction I felt. You want to know what this is really about? Bentley turned his attention to me, swaying slightly. Money. It's always about money with your family, Scarlett. Your father's company is drowning in debt, bad investments, embezzlement. Did he tell you that part? The room went silent. What? I looked at my father, who'd gone pale. Daddy, what is he talking about? It's nothing, sweetie. Bentley's drunk. Your CFO has been stealing from you for 3 years, Bentley continued, enjoying the chaos. $500,000, maybe more. That's why the banks won't touch you. That's why you're desperate. It's not just bad luck, it's fraud. I felt like I'd been punched. You knew about this? My father couldn't meet my eyes. We were handling it quietly. We didn't want to worry you. Didn't want to worry me? You were selling me to cover up a crime. It wasn't like that. Get out. My voice was cold. Both of you. Bentley, you're drunk and pathetic. Daddy, you're a coward and a liar. I want you both out of my apartment. Now. Scarlett, be reasonable. My father started. Now. Knox opened the door, his expression dangerous. You heard her? Leave. Bentley sneered. This isn't over. When Harrison finds out what kind of family his precious grandson is marrying into. He'll find out from me, Knox interrupted, not from a bitter drunk who can't handle rejection. Now get out before I help you out. For a moment, Bentley looked like he might swing at Knox, but Knox was 6 inches taller and stone-cold sober. Bentley stumbled toward the door instead, muttering threats. My father followed, pausing at the threshold. Scarlett, I was trying to protect you. You were trying to protect yourself. There's a difference. I couldn't look at him. Please go. When the door finally closed, I stood there, shaking. Knox reached for me, but I stepped back. Don't. Just don't. Scarlett, my whole life is a lie. I laughed, but it came out wrong. Broken. My father's been stealing, or covering up stealing, or both, and he was going to let me marry Bentley to fix it, to save his reputation. You didn't know. I should have known. I should have asked more questions, should have looked at the books myself instead of trusting him. I sank onto my couch, suddenly exhausted. God, I'm so stupid. Knox sat beside me, not touching, just present. You're not stupid. You trusted your father. That's not a character flaw. It is when your father is Richard Montgomery. We sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Knox spoke. When I was 23, my grandfather asked me to fire 200 workers. The company was restructuring. The numbers made sense on paper, but those were people, families, lives. He stared at his hands. I refused. We had a massive fight. He called me weak, sentimental, said I'd never be a real businessman. What did you do? I found a different solution. Took a salary cut. Convinced the board to restructure bonuses instead of jobs. Saved most of the positions. He smiled sadly. My grandfather never forgave me for undermining him. Said I made him look soft. Is that why you left? That's when I realized that being a Holloway came with strings I wasn't willing to accept. So yes, I left. Started using my middle name. Took consulting work. Tried to figure out who Knox was when he wasn't being groomed to be the next Harrison. I turned to really look at him. Did you figure it out? I'm getting there. He finally reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. Meeting you helped. You're brave, Scarlett. Braver than you think. I don't feel brave. I feel like a pawn in everyone else's game. So stop being a pawn. Be the queen. Make your own moves. Easy for you to say. You have money, options. And so do you. You're brilliant. Your father might have been running the company into the ground, but from what I've seen, you're the one who actually understands the business. The clients love you. The employees respect you. He shifted to face me fully. Take control, Scarlett. Push your father out. Clean house. Rebuild. With what money? Mine, if you want it. No strings, no fake engagement required. He paused. Although for the record, I'd like to keep the engagement, but make it real this time. My breath caught. What? I know this is terrible timing. I know you just found out your whole life is a mess. But Scarlett, somewhere between that coffee shop and right now, this stopped being pretend for me. His green eyes were intense, vulnerable. I don't want to be your fake fiancé. I want to be your real boyfriend, partner, whatever you want to call it. I want to figure out this mess together. Knox, you barely know me. I know you take your coffee black because you think adding cream is a sign of weakness. I know you reorganize books by color when you're stressed. I know you cry at dog food commercials but pretend you have allergies. He smiled. I know you're terrified of being controlled, but you're even more terrified of being alone. And I know that when I kiss you, everything else disappears. He wasn't wrong about any of it. This is crazy, I whispered. Probably. But what's the alternative? Walk away? Pretend this didn't happen? Go back to our separate lives where we're both running from who we're supposed to be? I thought about it, really thought about it. About Knox offering to invest without asking for anything. About how he'd stood up to my father, to Bentley. About how he'd been honest about his own struggles, his own fears. If we do this, really do this, there are rules, I said slowly. I'm listening. No more secrets. Complete honesty. Even when it's uncomfortable. Agreed. I'm not marrying you just because your grandfather wants it or my father needs it. If we get married someday, it's because we choose it. Absolutely. And I'm fixing my own company. I'll accept your investment, but I'm the one making decisions. No interference. I wouldn't dream of it. He grinned. Any other demands? Just one. I leaned in, close enough to feel his breath. Kiss me like you mean it. Like this is real. Like I'm not a business deal or a rebellion or a way to piss off your grandfather. Scarlett, Knox said softly, his hand cradling my face. You were never any of those things. You were always just you. And that's more than enough. When he kissed me this time, it was different. Slower, deeper. A promise and a question and an answer all at once. Outside, my life was falling apart. My father was a liar. My company was in ruins. My ex-fiancé was threatening revenge. But here, in this moment, with Knox's arms around me and his heart beating against mine, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. And maybe, just maybe, something that felt suspiciously like love. Harrison Holloway's club was the kind of place where they probably checked your net worth at the door. I sat across from Knox in the back of his car. Yes, he had a car and a driver, because of course he did, trying to calm my nerves. In 2 hours, I'd filed a police report about the embezzlement, called an emergency board meeting, and put my father on administrative leave. I was running on coffee and pure spite. You okay? Knox asked, squeezing my hand. Your grandfather is going to hate me. He hates everyone. Don't take it personally. That's not reassuring. Knox smiled, but I could see the tension in his jaw. Harrison Holloway is a ruthless businessman who values power above everything else. He's going to test you, push your buttons, try to find your weaknesses. So basically, he's my father with better PR. Essentially. He lifted my hand to his lips. But remember, you're not there to impress him. You're there to show him that I've made my choice, and he can either accept it or not. And if he doesn't, then he doesn't. Knox's eyes were steady. I meant what I said, Scarlett. I'm done letting him control my life. Whatever happens in there, we face it together. The club's dining room was all dark wood and old money. Harrison Holloway sat at a corner table, a king surveying his domain. He was in his 70s, but his eyes were sharp as knives. Knox. His voice carried across the room. You're late. By 3 minutes. Knox pulled out my chair before sitting. Grandfather, this is Scarlett Montgomery. Harrison's gaze swept over me like a scanner. Richard Montgomery's daughter, the one who was supposed to marry the Ashford boy. I see you've done your research, I said, keeping my voice steady. I always do. He signaled the waiter without looking away from me. Your family's company is in serious trouble. Embezzlement, fraud, poor management. And yet my grandson seems determined to involve himself. Care to explain why? With respect, Mr. Holloway, that's between Knox and me. His eyebrows rose. You have a spine. Interesting. Most society girls crumble under direct questioning. I'm not most society girls. Clearly, he leaned back. Knox, I assume you've told her about Charlotte. Knox went rigid beside me. That's not relevant. Who's Charlotte? I asked, ice forming in my stomach. Harrison smiled, and it wasn't kind. Charlotte Vanderbilt, Knox's ex-fiancé. They were engaged 2 years ago. Beautiful girl. Perfect pedigree. Her father and I had arranged— Stop! Knox's voice was steel. Scarlett, it's not what you think. Really? Because it sounds like you had an arranged engagement just like I did. Were you going to mention that? It wasn't the same. How is it different? You judge my father for trying to control my life, but your grandfather did the exact same thing to you. Harrison chuckled. She's quick. I like her. Stay out of this, Knox snapped at his grandfather before turning to me. Charlotte and I were together for 3 months. Our families pushed for an engagement. I proposed because I thought it was what everyone wanted. But I couldn't go through with it. I called off the wedding 2 weeks before it happened. Why? Because I didn't love her. Because I woke up one day and realized I was becoming my grandfather, making decisions based on what looked good on paper instead of what felt right. He grabbed my hand. That's why I understood you, Scarlett. I've been exactly where you are. And where did Charlotte end up? I asked quietly. Married to someone else. Happy, last I heard. We both dodged a bullet. Knox's eyes pleaded with me to understand. It was 2 years ago. Ancient history. Is it? Because your grandfather just weaponized it to drive a wedge between us. Harrison raised his glass. In business and war, you use every advantage. You should remember that, Miss Montgomery, if you intend to save your company. I turned to face him fully. You want to test me? Fine. Here's what I know. Holloway Industries started as a small construction firm in Queens. Your father died when you were 19, and everyone said you'd fail. Instead, you built an empire through calculated risks and ruthless efficiency. You've been married 3 times, estranged from 2 of your children, and your greatest fear is that Knox will make the same mistakes you did. The table went silent. You've been researching me too, Harrison said finally. I always do. I echoed his words back to him. And here's what else I know. Knox is not you. He's better. He values people over profits. He left $1 billion inheritance to find his own path. And if you can't see that as strength instead of weakness, then you don't deserve him in your life. Harrison stared at me for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed. You're absolutely right, he said, genuine warmth in his voice for the first time. I've been a terrible grandfather, controlling, demanding. I pushed Knox away because I was terrified he'd be soft, that he'd destroy what I built. Instead, he's trying to build something better, I said. Yes. Harrison looked at Knox. I've been wrong. About a lot of things. Charlotte was a mistake. My mistake, not yours. I thought I was protecting the family legacy, but I was just repeating my own father's mistakes. Knox looked stunned. Are you apologizing? Don't get used to it. But Harrison's eyes were softer. Miss Montgomery, you're right that my grandson is better than me, which is why I'm prepared to make you an offer. I don't want your money, I said immediately. Good. Because I'm not offering money. I'm offering something more valuable, my network, my connections, my reputation. He pulled out a folder. I've already made calls. 3 major investors are interested in Montgomery & Co. No strings, no family obligations, just business. I stared at the folder like it might explode. Why would you do this? Because Knox loves you. I can see it on his face. And if you're even half as good at business as you are at reading people, your company deserves a second chance. Harrison stood. Now I'm going to leave you 2 alone. I have a CFO to fire. Your CFO? Knox asked. The one who helped Richard Montgomery's CFO embezzle the money. Yes, I knew about it. I was waiting to see how you'd handle it. He looked at me. You handled it well, filed the police report, took control. That's leadership. He walked away, leaving Knox and me staring at each other. Did that just happen? I asked. I think my grandfather just gave us his blessing. And help. I'm in shock. Knox, about Charlotte. There's nothing to say. It was a mistake from start to finish. You're not a mistake, Scarlett. You're the first thing I've gotten right in years. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. But doubt crept in like poison. What if this is just another rebellion? I whispered. What if I'm just your way of proving something to your grandfather? Knox's face fell. You really think that? I don't know what to think anymore. Everything is moving so fast. A week ago, I didn't know you existed. Now what are we, Knox? Really? We're two people who found each other at exactly the right moment. Or exactly the wrong one. I stood, my legs shaky. I need time. To think. To figure out what I want without your grandfather's network or your money or your protection. Scarlett, please. I'm not saying goodbye. I'm just saying, not yet. Not until I can stand on my own 2 feet and know that I'm choosing you for the right reasons. I grabbed my purse. Save my company if you want. But give me space to save myself first. I walked out of that club with tears streaming down my face, leaving Knox sitting there looking like I'd just shattered something precious. Maybe I had. But I needed to know. Was I falling in love with Knox Holloway? Or was I just falling for the idea of being saved? And until I could answer that question honestly, I couldn't risk either of our hearts. Even if mine was already breaking. 3 months. That's how long it took me to realize I was an idiot. I threw myself into saving Montgomery and Co. with a vengeance. I fired the corrupt CFO, restructured the board, brought in new management, and personally met with every client we'd nearly lost. Harrison's connections helped, but I made sure every decision was mine. The company didn't just survive, it thrived. I did interviews, won awards, made Forbes' 30 Under 30 list. My father watched from the sidelines, officially retired, finally understanding that his daughter was more capable than he'd ever given her credit for. I proved I could stand on my own 2 feet. But every night, I went home to an empty apartment and wondered if proving a point was worth losing Knox. He'd respected my request for space, no calls, no texts, just one delivery, a small package containing the fake engagement ring we'd picked out together, and a note that said, "For when you're ready. No pressure, K." I wore that ring on a chain around my neck every single day. Pepper finally cornered me at a charity gala in December, the Christmas ball where I was supposed to have presented a suitable fiancé a year ago. "You're miserable," she said, handing me champagne. "I'm successful. Those aren't mutually exclusive, but in your case they are." She gestured around the ballroom. "You've rebuilt the company, proved you don't need Dad or Bentley or anyone. So what are you still trying to prove? I needed to know I could do it alone. And now you know. So what's stopping you? What if I'm not enough? What if without the drama and the fake engagement and the rebellion against our families, Knox realizes I'm just me?" Pepper laughed. "Scarlett, you're brilliant and terrifying and occasionally insane. If that's just you, then Knox would be lucky to have you." She squeezed my hand. "But you'll never know unless you stop hiding." She was right. God, I hated when she was right. I found Knox exactly where I'd left him 3 months ago, at Harrison's club. He sat at the same table, staring at a glass of whiskey like it held answers. He looked tired, thinner, like he hadn't been sleeping well either. "This seat taken?" I asked. Knox's head snapped up. For a moment he just stared like I was a ghost. Then he stood so fast his chair nearly toppled. "Scarlett." "Hi." My voice cracked. I saved my company, made it profitable, proved I could stand on my own." "I know. I've been following your press. A small smile. You were magnificent. I was also wrong. His smile faded. About what? About thinking I needed to choose between being saved and being independent. About thinking loving you meant being weak. I stepped closer. Knox, I spent 3 months proving I didn't need you, and I don't. I don't need your money or your name or your protection. He flinched, and I realized how that sounded. But I want you, I continued quickly. Not because you can save me, but because you see me, the real me. Not the Montgomery heiress or the Forbes feature or the woman who rebuilt her father's company. Just Scarlett. The one who reorganizes books by color and cries at dog commercials and is terrified of being ordinary. You could never be ordinary, Knox whispered. I spent 3 months being strong and independent and successful, and every single day I missed you. I missed your terrible jokes and the way you call me fiancé, and how you look at me like I'm the only person in the room. Tears spilled down my cheeks. I don't need you, Knox, but I choose you, if you'll still have me. Knox closed the distance between us in 2 strides, cupping my face like I was precious. Breakable. Scarlett Montgomery, I have been in love with you since you offered me $50,000 to pretend to be your fiancé. Every day since has just confirmed it. Even when I pushed you away? Especially then. Because you were brave enough to figure out what you wanted instead of settling for what was easy. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. I bought this 2.5 months ago. I've been carrying it everywhere, just in case. Inside was a ring. Not the fake one from before. This was an emerald surrounded by diamonds, the exact green of my dress from that first dinner party. It's not a proposal, Knox said quickly. Not yet. Not until you're absolutely sure. But it's a promise. That I'll wait. That I'll be here when you're ready. Yes. He blinked. Yes, what? Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'm sure. Yes to everything. I laughed through my tears. Knox, I just gave you a whole speech about choosing you. Did you think I was going to ask for more time? I thought maybe you'd want a date first. Do this properly. We've never done anything properly. Why start now? I held out my hand. Ask me. Knox dropped to one knee right there in the middle of Harrison's exclusive club, and I heard several gasps from nearby tables. Scarlett Montgomery, you are brilliant and fierce and absolutely terrifying. You don't need me, but somehow you want me anyway. Will you marry me? For real this time? Yes, I said, pulling him up to kiss him. Yes, yes, yes. The ring slid onto my finger perfectly, and this time it felt real. It felt right. Your grandfather is going to be insufferable about this, I murmured against his lips. Probably, but he's trying to be better. We all are. Knox pulled back to look at me. Thank you for giving me time to be sure, too. Were you not sure? I was terrified you'd realize you were too good for me. Impossible. I've seen you eat cereal straight from the box. He laughed, and it was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. Behind us, someone started clapping. Then someone else. Soon the entire dining room was applauding, these stuffy society people actually showing emotion. Harrison appeared beside our table, his eyes suspiciously bright. Welcome to the family, Scarlett. Officially this time. Thank you for the push, I said. The connections helped, but making me work for it was exactly what I needed. I knew you'd figure it out. He looked at Knox. You chose well. I know. Knox squeezed my hand. I really know. We left the club hand in hand, ready to start our life together. Not as a fake engagement or a business arrangement or a rebellion against our families. Just as 2 people who'd found each other at exactly the right moment, even if it felt like the wrong one. And this time, the fairy tale was real. 2 years later, the offices of Montgomery and Holloway Solutions took up 3 floors in a new building downtown. We'd merged our companies 6 months after the wedding, combining my client relationships with Knox's construction expertise to create something neither of us could have built alone. I walked into Knox's office, technically our office, but he'd claimed the corner with better light, and found him on the floor, with blueprints spread everywhere. "Working hard or hardly working?" I asked. He looked up with that smile that still made my stomach flip. "Come see this." I settled beside him, and he pointed to the plans. Community Center in Queens, completely funded by the Harrison Holloway Foundation. It'll have job training, childcare, after-school programs. Everything I wished existed when we were restructuring. "Your grandfather approved this?" "He suggested it. Said something about legacy being more than money." Knox kissed my temple. "You're a terrible influence on him." Someone had to be. I noticed an envelope on his desk. "What's that?" "Wedding invitation. Charlotte Vanderbilt. Well, Charlotte Morrison now. She's pregnant with her second kid. Seems happy." "Are you happy?" "Ecstatic. Because if I'd married her, I never would have met you." He pulled me into his lap. "Speaking of which, your sister called. She wants to know if we've thought about names." "Names for what?" Knox's hand settled on my stomach, and his eyes were full of hope and questions and love. "For this. If you want. No pressure." I stared at him, my heart doing somersaults. We'd talked about kids, about the future, but hadn't made any concrete plans. "I took a test this morning," I admitted. "I was going to tell you at dinner. And? And we're going to need to think about names." Knox's whoop of joy probably echoed through the entire building. He kissed me thoroughly, completely unprofessionally, right there in our office. "I love you," he said against my lips. "My brilliant, terrifying wife. I love you too. My secretly wealthy, formerly fake fiancé." We'd come so far from that coffee shop in Brooklyn, from desperate arrangements and fake rings and families who valued money over happiness. Now we had something real, something worth fighting for. And it all started with the best $50,000 I never actually spent. The end.